let's get into how you started this whole platform. How you got up to be in front of the camera on the microphone in front of me today.
It started really. I actually had an hiatus from social media. I stopped using social media. I was kind of off the grid, you could say, for a couple of months, and then my little brother-in-law just sparked a conversation with me. He was like, "You have so much to say. Like you have so much things to share. Um, why don't you utilize TikTok?" So it started from TikTok, and I was
Mm-hmm.
like, "Well, it's only a bunch of people dancing on TikTok," and that was my view. And he was like, "No, you're not understanding." So he showed me the platform, and then he showed me like, "Look, these are the people speaking about spirituality." But he says, "You're different to them, so you need to be on." And I was like, "Okay, if I do TikTok, then I've got to think of another thing because I just don't want to be TikTok based." So then I came up with I've been wanting to start a podcast since I would say 2019, 2020. And then the podcast was born in June 19th, I think was the first episode, and then of 2021. And then, yeah, I just repurposed those videos for social media. And I posted the full video podcast on YouTube. And then since then, I've been starting things like guided meditations and reaction series to interesting spiritual people. And I think that's how you probably got in touch with me. I think the algorithm of YouTube worked in my favor in this
Mm-hmm.
regard.
Yeah, for sure. I don't remember exactly how it was, but it was something. It was one of your shorts. That's all I know. And then I was like, oh, I
Oh,
like this guy. I
interesting.
like his energy.
Oh, thank you, thank you, thank you. So the podcast, even that's been morphed. Before I started with 2 episodes a week, then it was 1 episode a week, to kind of just bring out that quality. And what I've, what I want to do is, I've done like 3 weeks or 4 weeks, depending on how a month is structured, is to do based on the Bhagavad Gita, and then I'll do a wisdom of the mystics. So I look at different mystics on the last Sunday, when the podcast is released. The last week is based on that. So there's a few other things happening in the pipeline that I'm planning. So it's touching on that, what we were just discussing before about the spiritual marketplace, about how to have that right line of providing value instead of just taking money or taking donations. It's rather about having that understanding that I'm going to give you something in return. It's not going to be a you give me and I'm just going to sit in my iron throne and then just bring out a course that I'm going to say is $1,000, but really it's took me $5 to make.
Yep.
And I feel like I owe people that basic decency.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I felt with the podcast, is to always to bring out an authentic voice and just be as honest as I can be and real as I can be and as simple as I can be, because with non-duality, it can get really confusing.
Mm-hmm.
You can really steer into nihilism, which is dangerous in my opinion. And we can discuss this later with the neo Advaita scene that is getting big on YouTube. I mean, it's growing immensely.
Yeah.
And I blame us Brits for that, because it seems to be all British people that are doing it. And then you have other people that are interested, but because they've studied so much, they've confused themselves.
Mm. Mm-hmm.
So there's that too. So they can't understand how to live in the world and be in consciousness completely, like, or even to keep consciousness in the background and
Yeah.
and conduct your day to day as normal as possible.
Yeah. Mm. Now, why do you feel you owe others this knowledge?
They're giving me my time, their time. Sorry, they give me their time and their attention, and they've been messed around in the spiritual marketplace for quite a bit. I mean, there are people on
Mm.
TikTok selling candies to realign your chakras. So you know,
It's that easy?
um, it's that easy.
Wow.
Sometimes I think I'm in the wrong business, but, but yeah, like it's really. and I see that people are being taken a ride for. So, and my plan is long term. So, what I want to be able to do is create a platform where people know that, yeah, when you join the community of the Bearded Mystic podcast, it's not going to be, you're not going to be taken for a ride. He's going to be very honest, and he's going to tell you, actually, I'm not looking for a massive community either.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not
Mm.
even looking for a bit, like, I don't want the millions of views. I don't want, if they happen, they happen. But for me, the core people that are really interested in spirituality, that's where I want to focus my time on. And to be honest, no matter how big of an organization you have, if you have a look at all the spiritual organizations out there, it's only a handful that are really interested in the real spiritual deal. Like it's
Yeah.
only a handful.
I know what you
It's not
mean.
everyone. It's
Yeah.
not everyone.
So how would you differentiate between the real spiritual deal and the fake spiritual deal?
It's the questions. It's the intensity of wanting to know. You feel it in them. You know, like how
Yeah.
you said you could feel my vibe. I think you can feel it in people,
Yeah.
and you can see whether they are actually wanting to improve, or are they just here because they're asking a question just because they see everybody else is asking questions, and if I ask questions, that means I'm part of the community. No, sometimes you got to notice the silent people too. They may
Mm.
not say anything, but they are improving, or they may ask a question on a random moment, and you have to be there. So for me, you feel it from their vibe, you feel it from their way of being, and you can see the progress of someone spiritually. It's very easy to see. It's not you see it in the face. It just shows.
And the
You don't have,
energy. Yeah.
yeah. They
Mm-hmm.
don't have to hide it. So a lot of people, when they when they ask me questions, I can tell who's really asking questions or who's just playing the intellectual game. And the intellectual
Yeah.
game is like, you might as well go somewhere else who entertains that, and is willing to do that. I'm not willing to do that. I'm going to always go back to um, my sword is always sharp. So if you're not there, then go somewhere else. I'm
Yeah.
not for you as for a personal interaction.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's you can't fake authenticity.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And a lot of people try to. A lot of people try to.
Yeah. It's usually
You
that's
know,
counterintuitive.
like they'll have the garb. They'll have
Mm-hmm.
the the thing in the background. Will have all these mandalas, and they,
Yeah.
they know how to create that feeling. And you could, they grow the beard. I just love growing a beard. That's why I'm growing a beard. Um, or they're what they're wearing. And they have this. Uh, so it's a really interesting thing because I've been in the spiritual circles for a long time. What I've noticed is people have this look in their eyes, and you can tell, like, it's a bit vacant.
Hmm.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, there's
Yeah.
this vacant look in them. There's nobody home, but somebody's pretending to be at home.
Uh.
And
Mm.
and I see it in people, and I'm like, you're not there. You're thinking you're there, but you're not there.
Yeah.
And you can just see it because someone who's spiritual, from what I've seen, my gurus, the teachers I see on YouTube, like Swami Silvapriyananda or Rupert Spira, you see it in them. There's a genuine authenticity. Their eyes speak of this compassion,
Mm-hmm.
which is untouched. And I've seen it a few of your interviewers that you've interviewed, the guests that you've had.
Yeah.
I've seen it in them too. Like, they have that really, the Ramdas follower, the
See the Ramdas.
disciple. Yeah, see the Ramdas. He
Oh yeah, for
he just
sure.
spoke it.
Yeah.
So those people are, you can see it from a mile away,
Yeah.
who are genuine.
And it's crazy because it's not you're not in the same room as these people. Like it's through time and space on a screen that
Yeah,
you
yeah,
can
yeah.
feel their vibe. It's very very peculiar. And that's true too. Like there's plenty of spiritual people that I discover and I'm like, "Oh, I could probably get in touch with them
Mm.
and have them on the podcast, but just because you're quote unquote spiritual doesn't mean you're actually spiritual." you know? Yeah, there is that It's the real recognized real thing. I don't know what it is, where it comes from, but it is. There's something that you can just. I think it's just like if you're tapped in enough to yourself, you can tell when somebody else is also tapped in.
Very important that you are tapped in. Yes, that you are in touch with that. Uh, sorry, spiritual element within you, because if you're not growing spiritually, you will not be able to recognize the uh, because you need this discernment, the intellect.
Yeah,
So in the Bhagavad Gita, Sri Krishna, he really defines that. In the second chapter, it's about discerning between what is real and unreal. Even though what is real is consciousness and the unreal is everything else, but the whole point is you should use that intellect in your day-to-day life as well. So when you're looking at all the spiritual videos on YouTube or scrolling through TikTok or Instagram, and you have all this barrage of spiritual people with their spiritual channels, you got to see, well, who is really wanting to talk about consciousness and the real stuff,
yeah,
or who's the one that's talking about the unreal things. Uh, but again, there's a subtlety there too, because even with the unreal, there may be different levels of where people are. Like, for example, not everyone's going to want to talk about consciousness or pure consciousness or Brahman, the higher philosophies of Advaita Vedanta with me. They're not going to. They're probably more into the manifestation circles.
yeah,
So for them, manifestation is important. And for me, I feel it'd be more important for someone to exhaust that element first, then come to me,
yeah. I see.
rather than, or come to anyone like me, who's probably, there's thousands better than me, so they can go there. Um, so, uh, first exhaust that. If you're into mantras only, like do that first. And then when you're ready to really understand the truth, then go and find someone like that,
Hmm.
because otherwise I see it often. And actually, I can't remember the name of the person who created the Secret book. Do you know
What is
who
it?
that, the Secret, that documentary and
I
book?
know it. I don't know who authored it.
So the author, she created a new book called The Greatest Secret, and
Hmm.
she went into consciousness this time. She went into like the Rupert Spira, direct pathway. And if you look at the reviews on Amazon, it's really funny, because what you see is people who was into the manifestation are now against it. They're giving it like 1-star reviews.
Because it's like changed up from the first book.
Exactly, a
Uh,
complete change.
hmm.
And this is what happens when, and this is what I mean about having a smaller community, because with a smaller community, you're already pruning them. But if you have a large community, getting them all onto the same page once you've changed, because I think every teacher develops and changes
Hmm.
according to the time.
Hmm.
And so when you change as a teacher and these people haven't, you're you're done for
Oh, that's
in
true. Yeah.
terms. So, you lose your fan base. And then what happens there, unfortunately, no matter what, ego kicks in. I had this many million people now.
Hmm.
Now it's gone down to 1,000. It takes an incredible amount of courage to embrace that.
Hmm.
So I think for them, it's going to be interesting. So for me, I've been noticing these little shifts and been noticing uh, what really is going to work today, in terms of having a spiritual um, following or community. What does it look like?
Yeah. Hmm. I know what you mean. And that's just getting back to it. Authenticity.
Yeah, and the days of the gurus of the masses has gone, I
I
feel.
believe that as well. Hmm. Because it's so easy to claim the guru, like you're a guru or a master, and then it's like I don't know. There's just too much funny business nowadays. I don't
Yes,
know.
yes. And it's so some people, so I go on TikTok lives, and I get these random I get people ask me first, they say two things, and I realize if I don't say these things now, I'm going to make concessions in the future. So that someone will turn around to me and say, "Oh, you're like a guru for me, or you're a great teacher," and I will say, "No, I'm not a teacher. I'm not a guru. I'm just a friend of yours. I'm a
Yeah.
friend that's helping. That's it. Don't see me as anything else." or they'd be like, forgot the other one that they normally say, but it's normally like they try to make you into something that you're not. Oh yeah, they'll ask me, "Am I enlightened?" They'll be like, "Oh, are you enlightened?" And I say no. And even if I was, I'm never going to tell you, because
Yeah.
then what happens is people can't get. They don't understand. Being enlightened is just understanding there is only consciousness, and that is all you are, and that it ends there. It begins and ends there.
Yeah.
People what they think is, when they look at enlightenment, they look at the personality, and
Mm.
then they'd be like, "Oh, the personality is the enlightened being." No, the
Mm-hmm.
personality is a changing thing. It's unreal. If you go back to Sri Krishna's discernment principle, it's unreal. It's gonna change. So there's a few things I do deliberately just to ensure that in the future I don't get these stupid comments, like "you're a guru, you're this." I'm not none of those things. I don't want to be. I am happy just being a random Joe blogs, just uh, expressing his views on Vedanta. That's it.
Mm-hmm.
That's all.
Yeah. That's very humble. But I mean, that's probably going to happen if you keep doing this thing. That's probably going to happen for the rest of your career, to be honest with you.
You have to maintain it, like I mentioned. You have to maintain it. You've got to ensure that there's no room for concessions. And I tell you what's inspired me behind that, because there's two things. There's one, I've noticed how J. Krishnamurti worked around his people very much, again, like a friend. Wasn't any There was the appearance of a teacher and disciple thing for sure, but and there will always be that subtle. You can't get rid of that, right? There's that subtle difference, but he's but he cultivated that friendship whilst.
Mm.
And I see the same thing with Rupert Spira. I've attended a few of his webinars, and I've seen how he matches their energy, and he doesn't come across with the whole "I'm a guru" um, vibe. I
Yeah.
think he actually despises the line, and he says something. So I don't know if you, I don't know. Did you also interview Guru Viking?
Yeah. Way back.
Yes,
Mm-hmm.
yes. So Guru Viking had a conversation with Rupert, and they and I watched that one too. And in there, Rupert tells Guru Viking that I went on uh, I had to do a retreat. I think it was at the Omega Institute, and they showed, they give you a tour about, this is where your students are going to live, and this is where you're going to be, and they said this is a dining area for the students, and then they took Rupert to a little small room, and they said, "Oh, this is where you're going to eat, because you don't want the students bothering you." And he was like, "No, no, no, I'm going to eat with the students. That's where I want to be. I
Mm-hmm.
don't." And it's these things where I've learned that that's the real relationship that you got to have.
Yeah.
If you the moment you put yourself on a pedestal, just remember you got to go down.
Mm-hmm.
And either you're going to fall down,
Yeah.
or you're going to rather step down nicely.
Yeah.
So I think uh, eventually everyone has to go down from the pedestal, and it's just about whether you want to crash or whether you want to gracefully walk down, and that's up to people.
I agree. I agree, man. Yeah, I think the best teacher or guru shows somebody else who they are,
Yes.
who they truly are. Like the best teacher is somebody that doesn't say, "Look at me." It says, "No, look at you. Look who you
Yes.
are."
Yes. Yes. They always point to that awareness, that consciousness, which is always there, even if it's subtly in the background. Maybe we are not right now there, but even if you're in the world completely and you're totally enamored by the world still, that's fine. But subtly, these teachers are able to bring you to the background of awareness. That awareness is always there, regardless of what's going on in your day. If you have a great day, if you have a really bad day, that awareness is constantly there. They'll never create another layer of ego in you,
Yeah.
because it's very easy to get the spiritual ego too. And
Mm.
trust me, I've had that spiritual ego, and I know that it has taken me probably 10 years to slowly get rid of its clutch on me. I'm not even saying I've got rid of it, the clutch I'm just talking about. So
Mm.
if people think getting rid of the spiritual ego is easy, oh my God, they're in for a ride. Um,
Yeah.
so we got to ensure. So that's why when you go to awareness all the time, there is no ego to build. Like I mentioned this, I think in this week on my podcast episode, that, and it's based on J. Krishnamurti. And I said, like, how if there's only awareness, where is ego going to be built from? Like, ego can't build itself upon awareness.
Mm.
Awareness is so pure, it cannot be contaminated in any way. You can, uh, because if you go into the direct experience of that formless energy, of that imageless energy, that shapeless energy, it refuses. In my opinion, it refuses. I've tried to see if it can be manipulated. It doesn't. I've tried to mix it in with other things, with forms. It doesn't allow me to.
Mm.
Whenever and when I try to make it my personality, it refuses to be my personality,
Yeah.
because it contains my personality. It
Yeah.
cannot be my personality. It contains it. It
Mm-hmm.
contains everything,
Mm-hmm.
but it cannot be everything. And this is a subtle difference in non-duality, which people can't get, which is why you can get into the neo-Advaita scene, because they will say, "Oh, there's no self, there's no this, there's no that, there's no there's no recording." I've even heard one person say, "There's no meeting," while they speak on a Zoom meeting, and I'm like, this is taking it to the crazy level.
Yeah.
Um, and it's, but these type of things, and they call themselves non-dual teachers, uh, and I have to say that's what they refer themselves to,
Mm.
and they they really do not understand that subtle point of that everything that we see is, yes, it's an appearance in consciousness that is contained in consciousness, but is not consciousness. So you cannot say the meeting is not happening when you are contained in consciousness. This body is contained. This mind is contained.
Yeah.
So it's happening on a real basis. If I say I'm not speaking to Gary, it, it's an illusion. There's no Zoom meeting going on here. There's no podcast going on here. That's loony. That's not real.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
It's not real. It's not authentic. And
Mm.
and these people know it's not authentic.
Mm-hmm.
They know. If you tell me, I'm going to name them: Tony Parsons, Jim Newman. They know this is not authentic. They know, but because they've built up this following for years, who brought into these teachings, and I always ask, how many of these people have actually had that real awakening? And when I mean a real awakening, I mean it's just an understanding. You're not going to be expanding everywhere in the universe. I mean, that'd be crazy if that
Mm.
happened all the time. You can have one experience, that's different.
Yeah.
But, and, for me, these people are being disingenuous. And so it's really important that we understand these very subtle points in non-duality, and that we don't stray. And it's taken me time to make it as simple as I can, even defining it in that way, because it's very easy to add complex ideas to it, because then people will ask, well, why did this appearance occur? Why did it begin? And we always look for a reason, and sometimes I say maybe there is no reason,
Yeah.
because even in the Vedas, it's very interesting. On some questions, they say maybe we just don't know.
Hmm.
Maybe there is no way to know.
Yeah.
And maybe even the one that has created everything does not even know.
Hmm.
So it just allows things to be an open question, because maybe the answer's right there in front of us,
Hmm.
and it doesn't need to be communicated in words.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah.
Hidden in plain sight.
Yes, yes,
Mm-hmm.
absolutely, absolutely.
Mm. Wow. Well said. I think people project that kind of idea of this, nothing is real, as just a sort of to maintain their status. It's kind of like an edginess.
Yes. I mean, it's intriguing when you listen to it. I'm not going to say it's not appealing. Of course it is. It makes
Hmm.
sense. And, when you look at the Ashtavakra Gita, it's more or less on the same lines as as those people. But there's always a subtle difference because what we have to remember is that for an Ashtavakra Gita or for these radical non-dual texts from Hinduism, uh, they they have the backing of the Vedas and all the other scriptures with them. So they know they have a background. But the non-dual circle, they say there is no background.
Yeah. Hmm.
The neo Advaita scene. So um, it's very difficult then to defend that uh, point. Whilst with Ashtavakra, if he's ever questioned, he will be able to answer and say, well, yes, although I say there is no karma, there's no self, there's no non-self, although I say all this, but I know that this body and mind is real upon an appearance. And this is backed by such and such from the Upanishads, or, they will have that. And this is why it's important to kind of have a tradition as well, in not not in the sense that the tradition brings you down or restricts you, but you have the backing of what you say.
Mm.
That you're not just coming out with this. Because if it's funny, if this teaching is truly eternal, then it had to be true 5,000, 10,000 years ago, and it
Yeah.
had to be written down
Yeah.
or orally, communicated.
Hmm.
So, uh, in my opinion, the truth of consciousness, that pure consciousness or Brahman, is being said thousands of years ago in the Upanishads. So, and then again, emphasized in the Bhagavad Gita. So, when you have that as your backing, as a tradition, then then people know that you are not just saying things out of thin air. Like you look at the
Yeah.
great people, Swami Vivekananda, Paramahansa Yogananda, they have a backing, they have a foundation,
Yeah.
and that's
Hmm.
why their message was so appealing. Today, I see so many people recommend the autobiography of a yogi on TikTok, or the collected works of Swami Vivekananda. Why? These people came 100 years ago. Why they're still appealing today is because they have a backing of tradition. They know that what they're saying is not, it wasn't real and discovered in the 1800s or the 1900s. It was discovered thousands of years ago.
Yeah.
When you have that with you, it empowers you,
Hmm.
which is why, when you listen to people talk about their times with Brahmansa Yogananda or Swami Vivekananda or anyone like them, Ramana Maharishi, they were Nisargadatta Maharaj, they were, we talked about that energy. Their
Yep.
energy was so powerful. They were the true lions of spirituality.
Mm.
They roared this truth,
Yeah.
and and you know, in my opinion, I'm still just meowing. I'm not. I'm still meowing. I'm not even getting to the roar yet, and I hope one day I can.
Mm.
But yeah, when I see these people, they're the ones I go back to when I feel I'm confused about something.
Hmm.
These are the traditions that I go back to, and I feel when I have that, I'm empowered to continue on.
Hmm.
So if
I
that
agree.
makes sense.
For sure. Yeah, I like how you said the message is eternal. That authenticity that we spoke about,
Yes.
you can still feel that in these old texts, and it's just like this,
Yes.
it's like this frequency. It's like this transmission. It's like the Force in Star Wars. It's like
Yeah.
you can
Oh.
feel it. There's just
Mm.
something just like you just know when somebody's being real and you know when somebody's being fake. And that's through a podcast, it's through a book, it's through some kind of spoken word. There's just something, if you know, you know. Like I said, real recognize real. There's just some kind of truth. Like truth is I don't know, it has to be felt.
Yes. Yes. Yes, experienced, felt,
Mm,
and really, and not just felt like on the surface level. I know when you're talking about felt, you're talking about it being felt deep within.
yeah,
Because a
yeah,
lot of people, they may touch the surface and be like, "Oh yeah, I felt I had experienced something," and then really they've not
yeah. Like
experienced it deep within.
yeah, like grokked. Like it's literally it almost becomes a part of your being. Like when you feel it, it
Yes.
also becomes almost a part of you. Like there's some kind of resonance that just says, "Ooh, yep, yep,"
Yeah.
or "Ooh, nope, nope."
Yes, yes, yes. And this is why, Gary, I really feel it's important that people really sharpen their intellect, especially in today's day and age, because of the amount of information we gather. And that is brought or presented to us through social media, through the media itself, through adverts. You can't avoid walking down the street without a billboard smacking you in the face.
Mm,
So you're taking in so much information, so it's really important that we sharpen that intellect, have critical thinking skills, be based on rationality and logic whenever we express something. Because if you can't back it with rationality and logic, and this is something that is mentioned in, I was reading a text, it's a Kashmir Shaivism text, I think, the Guru Gita. It's based on a conversation between Lord Shiva and Parvati, and the chat. And Parvati asks him that, "Who are you worshipping, Lord Shiva? You're meant to be the Devo Kamadev. You're meant to be the gods of gods, and you're meditating. So who are you meditating upon?" First, he mentions he's meditating upon that eternal Brahman and the ultimate principle, and then he says, and then I also worship the Guru of the day who teaches this highest truth of Brahman. I meditate upon that person who shares this message
mm,
and shows people how to directly experience Brahman, this ultimate reality. And in there, Lord Shiva mentions four things. But one of the things that I found really amazing was the four things he said that you need, your experience and your any teaching needs to be based upon is rationality. If it's not rational, it's not eternal, most likely.
mm.
When I say rationality, I don't mean in the Western sense. I think the Eastern sense is a bit different, like the way things work in terms of logic and rationality. Um, but what it means there really is, and it's probably aligned somewhat with the Western logic and rationality, that you've got to be able to defend it. You've
I
got to be
see.
able to explain it. If
Yeah,
you can't explain it, it's not real.
explain it
It,
simply too, right?
yes, it has to be very simple.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, that's really important that we as people who are consuming so much today, that we are able to build up our intellect. It's so I've been thinking about how important the bhakti path is, the devotion path. And for me, devotion is a sign of higher intelligence, in my opinion. If you
Mm,
have devotion, it's after you've realized what Brahman is or what pure consciousness is. Only then can you have devotion. Before that, the devotion is within the elements of faith, or even, may I say, and I may be crossing a line when I say blind faith. And it may be blind faith towards a teacher, it may be blind faith towards a mantra or to a particular ritual or anything.
mm.
Uh, so when this devotion we have has to be cultivated with intellect. If it's not cultivated with intellect, it's going to fall down that trap of blind faith,
Yeah.
and then it's hard to get out of that too. spiritual ego and blind faith, they go together.
Yeah.
I would say they're two sides of the same coin.
Hmm. Yeah.
Um,
I can see that.
so for me, I think blind faith is not good. It doesn't help, and therefore it's really important that we build up that intellect, that discernment of what is real, what is unreal, and then once you know what's real, the outpouring you have towards the guru that showed you, or the gurus that showed you, you don't have to have one teacher, you can have many.
Mm-hmm.
um, the outpouring of gratitude that you have, the outpouring, I mean, I have gratitude for my parents for the fact, and sometimes I do, when I'm thinking about it, I do, uh, you know, tears do appear in my eyes. My eyes do moisten, because I think without my parents, I wouldn't have had a spiritual path to even follow,
Yeah.
or to even carve out for myself. Um,
Hmm.
so, you know, for example, I remember growing up, and although we followed a particular guru, and I still remember my dad used to read the Japji Sahib, which is based on Sikhi. And uh, then my dad used to listen to Osho as well. And when you hear these things growing up, they show you. So when I think about it, I'm like, yeah, my father taught me, my mother taught me how to be open-minded, and to approach people as much as I can to understand this truth, so I can understand it.
Hmm.
And even with my own guru, it became a very deep spiritual friendship, and I thank my dad for that. So there's there's this, and whenever it's my dad's birthday or Father's Day, I always mention this one point: thank you for giving me my guru, thank you. And
Hmm.
you know and yeah, I you have that devotion, and that's based on an intellectual base. And when I mean intellect, I don't mean dry. I'm now talking about something that is vibrant.
Hmm.
And it's vibrant. Why? Because I can see how these circumstances, these people uh, that have somehow appeared in my life, I don't know what I did in my past lives. This is where I do believe in past lives, because I'm like, this is crazy. How has this happened in my life? It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
Uh, you know, for the materialist scientists to say that this just all occurred by accident, for me, does not make sense.
Yeah. I know what you mean.
But
Too good to be
so
true. Hmm.
it's too good to be true. So for me, I have this incredible amount of gratitude and love towards my parents, towards my gurus, my spiritual teachers that have taught me, and to even the disciples who have been fellow travelers with me, even for them, because sometimes without the company of those people, you can sway away from the truth.
Yeah.
Sometimes I'm not saying that they convince you to stay on the path, or a particular spiritual organization. I'm not saying that. I'm saying they remind you that you've been shown a higher truth, and go towards that, because you can get distracted with life.
Hmm.
You know, it's very easy. But when you have that gratitude, that devotion, uh, along with the knowledge, the gyan, when you have it with that, then bhakti takes a whole different level. Then, you don't need to be in a trance or dancing like a wild person. You can
Yeah.
you can be sitting down, and the dance is happening within.
The dance within.
That is more. That is a real dance. The outward
Yeah.
dancing is one thing,
Mm.
but the inner dance, that's the ultimate.
Yeah. That's
And
good.
that's devotion for me. Uh,
Mm.
Devotion brings that dance for me inside, you know?
Mm.
And then you devote it to everything. Like, for example,
Yeah.
even if I know what pure consciousness is, well, I'm devoted to my wife, you know? Uh, when I have children one day, I'll be devoted to them. By seeing them as spiritual beings, they're the same consciousness that I am.
Hmm.
You are the same consciousness as I am. I'm going to have the same devotion to you as I'm going to have to everybody else. You know, that is what happens.
That's the dance.
That's the dance.
Mm.
There's a sameness to everything.
Yeah.
And everything you do is a sacred offering. Why? Because everything you see is divine.
Mm-hmm.
And it's when I say this, I say again with a disclaimer, I have sharpened the intellect so it can understand and discern between the truth and going into blind faith.
Yeah.
You know, I always
Yeah.
feel like it's important to do these disclaimers.
Yeah, I got you. So you can dance because you learned to dance.
Yes. And
Mm.
I thank my teachers for allowing me to. They gave the manual, but I had to read the manual, then I
Yeah.
had to practice the manual.
Exactly.
Because a lot of people, they think, oh, my guru gave me this mantra. So if I do this mantra, it will get me to enlightenment. No, don't just do the mantra. The teacher's also probably telling you and told you in the instructions, understand what it means.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Bring the understanding within.
Yep. That's what it's
But
all
we
about.
just go, but we just go with the outward stuff, you know. People
Yeah.
just do the surface level.
Yeah.
And I think also it helps people like feel like they're doing something in life. Like, oh yeah,
That too.
I did some spiritual deeds. I feel, maybe it'll give me brownie points in heaven or whatever they believe.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, so they do those things, but for me, it's about bringing it to yourself. You got to practice it yourself. That is real grace. When we talk about grace of the master or grace of the teachings,
Yeah.
that's grace.
To
When
truly
you
bring it in.
when you when you practice it, yeah,
Yeah, for
that's
sure.
grace. To even I've analyzed it within myself. For me to even practice this, it's grace.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
There's
Yeah.
so many things that could distract me with the world today. Yeah, I choose to spend my time. Yes, I still listen to um, you know, every other music out there. I watch Netflix and Amazon Prime, and I watch all sorts of stuff on there. Um, there's no restriction. I'm completely free when it comes to that. But at the same time, if you ask anyone that knows me, they're like, if he has time, he'd be reading his book, or he'd be listening to a spiritual podcast, or I'll be listening to mantras, and sitting down meditating. My whole life is centered around spirituality, and I find that to be grace.
Yep.
How I got there is because I knew I had to cultivate that practice.
Mm-hmm.
I had to change my mind. You
Mm-hmm.
know, you
Yep.
have to change the mindset. Nobody else is going to do it for you. No
Mm-hmm.
guru will change your mindset. They can trigger it. That's all.
You show the way.
Show the way, but you got to walk.
Yeah.
They're the signpost. You got to walk the direction.
Yep.
And and that's the real deal, man. That's the grace for me.
Yeah.
And that's what I mean when you have gratitude. Grace is intertwined in all this. Even
Yeah.
compassion, actually, all the spiritual virtues are very intertwined. They're very connected, interconnected. It's like once you
Yeah.
experience one, you're going to experience all of them.
Mm-hmm.
And
Truly.
it's not a linear process. It's kind of all in the center, so to speak.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
You know?
exactly. And it all builds, it's all that same energy. It's all that same vibe. And they all build on each other.
Yes.
Passion,
Yes.
grace, blessings, knowledge,
Yes.
truth, whatever you want to say. It's all that same essence. Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And we and those of us that are able to um, have this practice as our daily bread,
Hmm.
um, we also, and I want to go back to that authenticity piece. That's where we owe people, because the moment you mess up, the whole community is seen as messed up.
Hmm.
And I've seen this, a lot of people that um, have gone to teachers who, well, they were teachers back then. I don't think they're teachers now, but they've people become disillusioned because they follow someone and that person now isn't what they appear to be. But again, I put it down to you've got to be people have got to see that your daily life is based upon spirituality. That everything you do is karma yoga. It is a yoga of karma. It is a connection to the divine. When whatever you do, like the little things that you do, is based on a feeling of divinity, a feeling of union with that pure consciousness, which is everywhere. And when you do that, I think people gotta see it. And whether you're in the spotlight or not in the spotlight, you can't live a dual life. Um, you can't be spiritual for a few hours. Like for example, if I was just spiritual for my podcast, and then I'm a total idiot
Exactly.
after my podcast, uh, my wife's gonna probably one day listen to my podcast and say, "You said this there. Look at your actions here."
Mm-hmm.
Then what are you going to do? Most people would deny, oh, no, no, that's what I said on the podcast. It's not, they'll create all sorts of reasons and justifications and rationalizations. But for me, that just brings about also another level of mental illness and a real mental illness. It
Yeah.
brings schizophrenia,
Yeah.
like for sure. Like you're pretending to be spiritual for 2 hours, and then the next day you don't give a damn about the spiritual path or
Yeah.
what you learned.
Yeah. There's no
So
half measures. You got to go all
yeah,
in.
yeah, it's yes, yes, all in or just don't bother. That's my opinion. Just don't bother.
Honestly,
Um,
yeah.
it's I rather I rather see a few spiritual people than a lot of people trying to be spiritual,
Yeah, I agree. I agree. Mm.
because that's the only way we can have authenticity. Um,
Quality over quantity.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
I agree. I think that's how it's kind of meant to be too. I mean, there is no
Yes,
meant to be and not meant to be, but in
yeah,
terms of how we're speaking, I think that is. I think that transmission is kind of meant to be held by certain select individuals at this point in time, at least.
yes, yes. Unless everybody becomes alert enough and are able to awaken themselves
Mm-hmm.
to that level of spirituality and understand that it's not separate to their lives that they live.
Yeah.
It's not the um, it's not that 1 or 2 hours a day or 1 or 2 hours a week. It's much more than that. When if people are willing to do that, then maybe. But I think right now we're still, despite the pandemic showing us how money doesn't matter,
Mm-hmm.
wealth does not matter. If you die, you die.
Yep.
People around you have died. Uh, and the pandemic has also shown us that all you need really is your home.
Yeah.
Without your home, uh, you would be lost. Uh,
Yeah.
uh, so
So
it,
true.
it, 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 this pandemic has shown us amazing lessons. And, I've laughed constantly. I said, my home has become my ashram
Mm.
because this is where I can practice everything now. And I
Yeah.
don't have to live a dual life or a triple life. Like I'm not going to work. My work is here. My podcast is here. Like everything is happening at this place.
It's beautiful.
And um, the pandemic also gave me the ability to introspect, I think. And a lot of people got to introspect during this time. Um, I wish in the States we had a bit of a longer lockdown so people could introspect a bit more because that probably would have been needed.
Don't jinx
Um,
it, man. It might happen.
yeah, true. um, so I just wish that people could introspect a bit more to see that what was normal wasn't actually that great. It was something that we settled with,
Yeah.
and it wasn't great. It wasn't as awesome. So when people see this thing of, oh yes, we're going back to normal, I'm like, no, 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 no. We're going back. We're letting history repeat itself,
Yeah.
and yet we're saying we're more alert now. No, we're going back to old habits,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm constantly, because of the habits that the pandemic kind of within me, kind of not, I won't say it kind of speeded up the process of allowing just my life to be a spiritual life,
Yeah.
and that's it.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't want anything to disturb that now.
Yeah.
I don't want anything to distract that now. So if anything tries to mess around with that now, I'm like, no, uh,
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna have to sacrifice that one thing. I have to find an alternative, you
Yeah.
know. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
so I do hope that people do learn their lessons of that introspection, no matter how short of a time it was. That whatever they saw as normal wasn't that great, and they don't fall under that same trap. That
Yeah.
really, and I think about it, if we were more centered in terms of our home life, would we need to buy so much clothes? Would we need to buy so much? I guess technology you would buy because it's in your home, but it would just be home technology. Would you be able to then to afford an electric car rather than a car that's filled with petrol or gas or diesel? Yeah, you'd be able to do those things. Um, yeah, okay, air travel would be a bit difficult, but apart from that, there's ways you can work around things, and you would see things differently.
Yeah.
Um, so uh, yeah, uh, we have to really understand that the life out there that we was that pre-COVID normal, which is becoming normal again now, um, uh,
Somehow. Yeah.
somehow, yeah. Despite we apparently had rude awakenings back in 2020.
Mm-hmm.
If we're going to go back down that route, we are going to go back to that living 3, 4, 10 lives or masks or that we wore during that time.
Yeah.
We're gonna be going back to living that full sense of living,
Yeah. Yeah.
because see, a lot of people I get this a lot. I don't know if you get this, but when people look at spiritual people, they think, oh, it must be boring. All they do is meditate, and
Mm-hmm.
they just study these scriptures, and all they want to talk about is spirituality. And I'm like, this is the most exhilarating experience or exhilarating time of my life
Yep.
that I can ever express to you. This
Mm-hmm.
is the most interesting thing.
Yeah.
This thing allows me to just be. I don't have to be anything. You know how comfortable it is without being anything?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And people don't get it. Like they need to be something. I'm like, no, just being no thing, just being no personality, just not being anything, not putting up a show for anyone.
Yeah.
It's just so easy. It allows my
Exactly.
life to be so simple,
Exactly.
and I don't need to complicate my life.
Mm-hmm.
So I have felt recently that's what I want to keep building upon. You
Mm.
know,
Mm-hmm.
and the ashram isn't really your home. The ashram is here, man.
Mm-hmm.
It's here in your heart.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Wow. Well said. For sure. Wow. Yeah. That was good, man. You passed the test. Yeah, it was almost like seems like the last 2 years is like some kind of test for our psyche, and we had a chance, like we had this experience to really go within or resist the change, or but if you went with the
Yes.
change, you find some kind of sanctity of the self. You find some kind of
Yes.
grace within yourself, and once you get that taste, you know, of the fruit within, it's like there's no other way to live, you know?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. How do
Uh,
you, sorry, were you gonna say something?
no, go on. Go on.
Okay, okay. How would you direct somebody to that path, to that wavelength that has no idea what we're talking about right now?
Mm.
You know, how would you, to the people that think the spiritual people are boring or crazy or like, what's up with this guy? What if somebody came up to you in a curious manner and said, "Hey, man, look, how do I get what you got?"
So, a very good question. And I, first of all, like, I don't look to convince anyone. So, that's the one thing I'll be like, don't do what I do. Uh, Carry on doing what you want. But
Hmm.
say, as you mentioned, someone is curious and they actually do want to improve their life and be spiritual, or cultivate some sort of practice. What I normally tell people, and this is my signature kind of practice that I tell people to do, is for 1 minute of your waking, 1 minute every hour of your waking day, just spend that in silence.
Hmm.
Just watch your thoughts.
One
Don't
minute.
do anything. Just watch. You don't even regulate your breathing. Don't do anything like, because then you're gonna be too conscious if I'm breathing right.
Yeah.
So, so um, although I do agree with the person that you spoke to, I think the video you posted a few days ago, breathing is very essential in spirituality. I do agree with that. But for
Hmm.
someone who's wanting to know, in the beginning, I would say spend that 1 minute, just 1 minute. Put the timer on if you must. Just spend 1 minute every hour of your waking day and just spend it in silence. Just watch your thoughts. Just keep watching. Don't do anything, and allow your thoughts to be like clouds passing by on, and the blue sky is always there.
Mm.
You know, the blue sky is always there. So just keep watching. And then after a month, when you feel comfortable sitting down and being in silence for 1 minute every hour for your waking day, take it to 5 minutes
Hmm.
every couple of hours of your waking day. So you don't over, it may be too much to do it every hour, but a couple of hours, every 2 hours for 5 minutes, just spend in that silence. Then I want you to watch your thoughts and then see if there is anything watching the watcher.
Hmm.
Observe that element. And hopefully, and they should continue that for, I think, 2 or 3 months, because it will take time for them to get used to it. Then, when they come to that realization, oh, there's that blue sky is the real me that is watching my mind. And then watching my mind watch the thoughts. And if I'm this blue sky watcher, what is it? At that point, I hope that the person will ask me the question, or will consult another person with the question, what is that? And then it can be told that that is what pure consciousness is. And then once they reveal that, if they ask me, I would say, now for 30 minutes a day, spend your time with this pure consciousness. And just, if you want to do it every morning, evening is up to you, but at least every day for 30 minutes. Even if it's before you go to bed. If you're lying in bed and even if you go to sleep thinking about this, that's still great. At least your last thought was about consciousness.
Yeah.
So
Hmm.
um so whenever you feel comfortable in the day, because what we need to have in today's day and age, again, is the flexibility of practice. So hopefully with that person, they're not actually being given any theory. They've gone straight into practice
Yeah. Self
and
inquiry.
being.
Hmm. Yeah.
And hopefully some people are a bit quicker than that. They probably don't need a month of doing a minute every day. They probably go straight into, well, I observed this. So how do I stabilize in this? So that there may be people on different wavelengths, and there may be some people may be quicker, some people may be a bit slower.
Yeah.
So it's, again, this is why I mentioned it all goes back to having the smaller community, because then you can work with the person
Yeah.
and you can say, keep this for a few minutes. So it depends on that person's temperament. But yeah, and then you can show them the scriptures, you can show them different teachers. And I believe in teacher sharing. I really do. I believe that people shouldn't just have one teacher.
Mm-hmm.
I think you should utilize what you can from each teacher.
Yeah.
They all have a special way of expressing things, the genuine ones we're talking about.
Yeah.
So when you listen to them, you match it to your experience of pure consciousness, of the formless, of that imageless, shapeless. It, it has no edge. When people understand that that is what they are, there's no who anymore.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
There's no persona in this. Once they understand this, they can then live a life that is spiritual, but it is based on experience
Exactly.
and the day
Mm-hmm.
to day, second to second experience. Not just the 30 minutes of meditation, but every moment speaks of this. Every moment you know you cannot escape this pure consciousness. Right now, Gary, me and you cannot escape this. We may try, but we cannot.
Mm.
Because we understand that we are always going to be contained in this. We're not imprisoned. We're not
Yeah.
imprisoned.
Mm.
We're not bound. We are actually free in this. And
Yeah.
it's not free as in there's space. There's no
Yeah.
space either, man.
Yeah. Exactly. That's the thing
It's
is the words. You have to choose the words wisely because they.
I learned that from Rupert Spira. I
Mm.
learned it from him to be very careful with the words.
Yeah.
Yes, you're absolutely right. And Gary, you're way ahead. Uh, and the reason why I say that is because you've understood that point, that words carry a lot of weight.
Yeah.
So,
Exactly.
kudos to you, man. Kudos to you.
Kudos to you. Yeah, man. It's ironic because we're talking and we've already spoke for about an hour, but you have to realize it's almost like what's behind the words. It's like what is that transmission that is not just at the base level of what we're saying or what somebody else is saying. It's like there's something. It's like almost codified in a certain word, and it's like you have to
Yes.
see beyond that base level of being in the prison of the mind, quote unquote, or freeing yourself or liberating yourself. There's something that lies beyond the concept of what that brings. And yeah,
Yes. Wow.
yeah,
Wow. Wow. Yes. Beyond the concepts. Yeah. Beyond the word. Like, even when we say pure consciousness or pure awareness, those are just, again, they probably will be the strongest pointers, but that's it.
that's it. Yeah,
They don't have, like, for example, some people, when I'm on TikTok live, they like to say, they like to ask me if I believe in a God. And I'm like, if I use the word God, the way I see it is going to be
mm.
different to the way you interpret it.
That's the thing with words is we have same words, different dictionaries, and how we interpret
Yes,
it.
I like that, different dictionaries. um, so it's like, so for me, I'm going to say there is no God because it's not going to. Because for me, I do believe that consciousness is what we can call God. But I always ask this question: what would God call itself?
That's a good one. Nothing. I don't know. There was just
It'd be a
God.
pure silence.
Yeah, exactly.
It's the whole thing in Tao Te Ching. Lao Tzu, in cricket, he hits a sixer um, uh, when he says, "The Tao that can be named is not the Tao,"
Yes. Mm-hmm. Mm.
and uh, and whenever we name something, whenever we use the word God or even consciousness, we're making concessions already
Mm-hmm.
with the names.
Yeah.
We're already kind of having to. in a way, it does feel like it's going against being when I
Yeah,
have to use words. If I'm honest,
yeah, I know what you mean. I've heard stories of
but
Ramana Maharshi a lot of times just sitting in silence, and I think
yes,
not even responding to people's inquiries. He would just simply be in some instances, and I understand. I
yeah,
understand why. Sometimes I'm like, oh, I'm saying a little too much here, and I think it's true, man. You have to
yeah.
choose wisely.
I'm like you. I get excited and then I talk a lot, and but what can be communicated is really in silence. And yes, and just imagine I read Paul Brunton's book. I think it's In Search of the Self or In Search in India or something like that. Um, and in there he talks about when he meets Ramana Maharishi, and he says he asks Ramana so many questions, and Ramana sometimes just looks the other way and looks out the window.
Yeah.
And I was thinking about for a British guy, and I would consider myself also being brought up in the West. If I saw someone do that, I'd be like, "That's really rude."
Yeah.
But Paul didn't, and I think Paul had like this. But he then looked at what Ramana was looking at. He he followed the Guru's gaze
Mm-hmm.
and then got it.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't about what Ramana was looking at was important. You know, we would say, "Oh, there's probably the mountain there, or there was something, some scenery." We would think the scenery is important,
Mm-hmm.
right? But for uh, Ramana, it wasn't the scenery he was looking at. It was beyond that. And Paul, because he was ready, he saw this, and that's the again, it's the whole Buddhist saying that. Um, Don't look at the finger, look at where the finger's pointing to. If
Yeah.
the finger's pointing at the moon, look at the moon.
Mm-hmm.
Holding on to the finger creates that spiritual dependency that we often see. Uh,
Exactly.
you know,
Mm-hmm.
spirituality, if you really follow the process, if you really understand it, it makes you independent as a person.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
If you do not
Surely.
feel free, then you're trapped.
That's what it's all
You
about,
did,
right?
yeah. And you created another, and actually, it's a stronger prison.
Mm.
The world actually doesn't have a strong. It's not a strong imprisonment at all. It falls literally at the moment you get in touch with reality. You see that
Yeah.
the world has no strong base at all.
It's an illusion, Maya.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
absolutely. And whilst with the spiritual imprisonment that you can get, that is hard because you think there's a prison there, but there's nothing there. But you're so convinced. And the imprisonment can be until my guru blesses me, or until I practice this mantra 1,000 times, unless I go to this pilgrimage, unless I do this and that, unless I ask for forgiveness from God. All these little things that people do, these are all imprisonments because we're not looking at them to liberate ourselves. The intention is not to liberate ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, to really liberate yourself requires that requires the audacity to challenge everything that you believe
Mm.
and have faith in.
Yeah. That requires courage.
It requires an incredible amount of courage. Incredible. So for me, it's really important that what I look for in people is as well that I want to be part of my community is those that are willing to be independent.
I see. Yeah.
You know, if
Mm-hmm.
that's another criteria we can use, is that willingness to be independent. Maybe right now they can't be, they need a hand holding them, that's fine. But eventually they should have that feeling that I need to be independent.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, that is, I see this element in a lot of genuine people. I don't want to call them spiritual people. I just want to call them people because they're normal, like me and you.
Yeah.
We're normal people. It's the whole Zen saying, yeah. Before enlightenment, chopping wood. um, fetching water
Yep.
after enlightenment, chopping wood, fetching water. Nothing
Yeah.
changes.
Exactly.
The outer appearance doesn't mean anything. Or the inner is everything. But you don't change as a person. The personhood is just the same illusion.
Yeah.
And this goes. Oh, I want to touch back on the whole when people take others for a ride with all these courses and all this type of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
One thing, there needs to be a transparency for me in the spiritual circles, that how much you're earning from this and how much is actually costing you.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
There needs to be a real transparency.
I
One
think
thing
so.
that I've vowed to do is the moment that every year, so June 19th, when that occurs, not whenever it occurs, when that occurs, because it occurs every year, um, I will publish how much things has cost me to make and how much money I've received as donations or through Patreon or something.
Yeah.
So everything needs to be transparent. And but it's got to start with practice, right? I can't just say it and then not do it. So
Mm-hmm.
for me, that's the one thing that I feel is really important to do, is have that transparency.
I agree.
And say you are earning a lot more than it's costing, still that's fine. Just be honest about it.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know,
Exactly. Mm-hmm.
it's not a problem. If, for example, if you use Joe Dispenza as a, or I know about Sadhguru Jogi Vasudev, like he has these different courses and they cost different levels of money.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so fine, but just declare how much you've earned from people, from donations and from these courses, and how much it costs you. Because I'm sure your ashram costs money to do. I'm sure uh, you know those things have to be there. The spiritual transparency, the transparency also in our dealings with the world should
Mm.
be there too.
I think
So
so
for me,
too.
that's really important. One of the
Mm.
things that I really find. Uh, Otherwise, if you're not declaring how much you're earning and and also how much success rate is with these courses,
Yeah. Right. Exactly.
because everyone's saying, oh, if you do this 3 steps, you will get enlightened. To say these bold statements,
Yeah.
yeah. And I'm like, how many of your people do you know have got enlightened from these things?
Yeah.
If they haven't, you need to also declare your success rate.
Mm.
Now, the funny thing is, how are you going to measure spiritual success?
Yeah.
That will be.
Exactly. That was gonna be my question, but yeah, I don't know. That's the thing. It's like where do you get that metric from?
And this is what I mean. These courses, in my opinion, if say tomorrow, if I decide to create a course, all you can say is that this course can guide you towards enlightenment. It cannot do, and
Yeah.
yeah, it won't sell as much because it's not promising anything, but you're being more authentic.
Mm-hmm.
Unless your course can actually get someone to directly experience enlightenment, but then how do you then ensure that someone then practices and stays in that state all the time? Because this
Yeah.
is where I find a
There's only so
disconnect
much that
happening.
someone can do. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's where I feel the disconnect is. So a lot of people, they feel they may attend a talk, a seminar, or they may attend a meeting with or have a darshan with a guru, and they feel great and holy and spiritual at that time, and it's genuine. I don't think those feelings are. I say for most people, it's going to be a genuine feeling. They feel connected to something divine and holy and all that. But then, how do you bring it again into your day to day life?
Mm-hmm.
And this is where I feel gurus need to spend more of their time. Is not allowing people to chase the enlightenment experience, but actually allow them to experience it day to day in their lives.
Yeah. Exactly.
Give them practical tips. And maybe
Mm-hmm.
not even practical tips. If you have a strong foundation, which is why I talked about having the ancient scriptures. Say if you're a Christian mystic, then you have the Bible and the Torah if you're a Muslim, you have the Quran and all the other mystics. Like, you got to have a foundation. And
Mm-hmm.
that's why I think the foundation is so important, because the foundation provides the answers.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And then also, I remember Osho said this wonderful thing, because someone came to him who was a follower of Satya Sai Baba, the one with the afro, that Sai Baba, the one who used to materialize things. And he came to Osho and said, I follow Satya Sai Baba, now I want to follow you, because what you said has touched my heart. And Osho turned around and said, you go back to Satya Sai Baba, you cannot be my disciple.
Mm-hmm.
And he says the reason for this is because you're not a genuine disciple. After, you'll find a flaw with me, because there's going to be a flaw with me, and you're going to go to somebody else, and then you're going to find something wrong with them. The real issue is you're not willing to be a real disciple.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I feel that's very true. Like, am I being a real disciple?
Hmm.
That
Yeah.
introspection. So the disciple, the
Hmm.
seeker, has to also want to improve their life after that special experience they've had.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's not just about the experience, even though it's obviously very important. Direct experience is
Yes.
very important. But you gotta still chop wood and carry water. We're still here in these bodies. We're still we're still human.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
We still have this game to play and this act to put on, I guess you could say. We're still, in the world. But
Yes.
I feel like you approach the world a little differently though, once you have the
Yes.
experience.
Yeah. You can't be an arsehole to people. You can't,
Exactly.
like, the way I was speaking to a friend, and he was asking me um about how does one practice spirituality day to day. And I said, look, people are going to judge me by the way I treat a waiter or waitress. They're going to judge me how I treat a cashier. They get people. My life has to speak of my spiritual experience everywhere,
Hmm.
and there's no one watching me. There's no God watching me that's judging me. I'm seeing it for myself.
Yep.
And the moment you feel, I guess this is where discernment is also a strong thing, because when I feel that I'm being disingenuous or not as authentic, I feel it automatically, and I feel this
Mm.
incredible sense of, damn, what did I just do?
Yep. I know what you mean.
And so you want to know someone by, so for me, it's how you treat everybody in life. Do you give everybody a smile? Like, a lot of people, they would ask me, well, um, people can't see if I'm smiling because I'm wearing a mask. I'm like, but your eyes can be seen.
Mm.
And if you're smiling, your eyes also show this.
True. Very true.
And I said, your eyes speak everything. So if you're frowning, you can look at, people can see you're frowning.
Yeah.
If you're lost, people can see you're lost.
Mm-hmm.
Your eyes say everything.
Windows to the
Um,
soul.
yes, exactly.
Hmm.
So for me, it's all about smiling, being kind. I'm not saying that you have to falsely apply them. Like, oh, I have to be kind. No, kindness is the natural uh, activity.
Yeah, it's easy, simple.
Yeah,
It's
you know,
our
being
innate nature.
humble. Yeah, being humble. Yeah, and uh, being compassionate.
Mm-hmm.
You know, once we and I learned everything from my guru. I observed my guru, and I was like, well, this is the way I want to be.
Who is
Because
that?
so my guru was he's Baba Hardev Singh Ji, the Nirgari Baba. He passed away in 2016.
Mm.
And the one thing I used to say to people who didn't know who he was, I would say, if you got rid of all the spiritual teachings that he gave, he was just a damn good human being.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like, I remember when he passed away, a friend who I was living with in London said, Today I feel like humanity's lost something big. It was 2016 at the time, and a lot of crazy things happened in 2016.
Yeah.
Um, and he was like, "Oh, we've we've lost someone. We've lost someone who kind of was just full of humanity." Because when
Yeah.
I met him, and he didn't believe in him. He didn't go to our satsang or anything. He was, um, he said, "I just felt incredible warmth and love from someone that I've never felt before."
Mm.
And so for me, I observed him and I was like, this is the way I want to be. So in the beginning, yes, you maybe learn to imitate, but eventually it just becomes your nature, because
Mm.
nature's the same. That pure consciousness, that formless, it's the
Yeah.
same thing. And so being kind, being humble, being compassionate, how to be with someone when someone loses a loved one. How many wrong things do people say when someone loses a loved one?
Yeah, that's
You
true.
know,
Mm-hmm.
when it comes to grief, the amount of crap you have to hear, it's unbelievable. Oh, the person's gone to a better place. And you're like, but for me, the better place was when that person was in my life,
Mm.
you know?
Mm.
Like the little things you say, or, don't worry, you'll get used to the loss. And you're like, but no, I won't get used to the loss. Well, yeah, maybe get used to loss, but I'm still going to miss the person.
Yeah.
And these, but one thing I remember, so when my brother passed away, my guru sent a text message to me, and he said, um, he just said one line that, "I understand the pain that you're going through right now,"
Wow.
and that was it. That's all he said. And he I didn't cry when my brother died until the third day when I received the message is when I broke down. Reading that message, I broke down
Mm. Wow.
because someone just said they understood my pain.
That's nuts. Wow.
And this, for me, is what really shows a spiritual being, someone who really speaks it. They understand you.
Yeah.
So if someone comes to you and they say, "I'm in incredible pain and depression," I broke up with someone. It can be something that we may see it as, "Oh, get over it. You'll find someone else." That tends to be the approach of the world. But when someone goes through a breakup, it's incredibly painful.
Mm.
And just saying, "I understand what you're going through," is enough for those people. And, if they say, "Well, what do I do? I'm going through these problems." One thing I do recommend is, uh, and I say this to everyone who goes through grief or anything, um, go through therapy. Don't find your answers in spirituality yet or in meditation.
Mm.
First, address the pain and
Yeah.
deal with the pain,
Yeah.
and then go to meditation. So go through therapy. It's important to address those things first,
Mm.
um, because otherwise, I'm sure you've seen it, and I'm sure you've seen videos of those spiritual beings who go around a spiritual teacher, but you can see that they're going through incredible pain, but they're masking that pain with the adulation of what's going around them.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
You see these songs that happen on YouTube. So many of them in the non-dual circles. You see that,
Yeah.
you know.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, it's really important that we, as spiritual beings, we also see the importance of therapy
Yeah.
and telling people to go through counseling of some sort before they enter meditation. So, for example, going to back to the scenario that you gave of that person, probably the one question I will ask is, well, what is your mental state right now?
Yeah. Yeah.
Because are you really after spirituality, or are you after dealing with the mind? Because if it's the mind, that I can't help you there.
Mm-hmm.
um, there's other people who are much better and much more qualified and who can do a greater job. Go to them.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
It's also having the humility to be able to say that, right? And not say you have the answers to everything.
Yeah.
you know
Exactly. Exactly.
I,
Yeah.
I've had that when someone said, "Oh, I get negative thoughts all the time." I was like, "Well, you need to go through cognitive behavioral therapy. So go and speak to someone who can help you with that, because meditation is only going to increase your negativity. I can just sense it from the chat.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Yeah.
you're just gonna go,
Honestly.
you're just gonna go into that. A negative thought appears, and you're gonna get carried away with that negative thought, and that negative thought's gonna take you in a. It's like a tree, right? It's got so many branches and fruits and seeds and flowers. It's gonna. That's what's gonna happen to people. Yeah. Yeah. Especially today, with how, like I said, today is a different scenario to 30, 40 years ago, or thousands of years ago. I think we're
For
dealing with
sure.
different level of species of called human beings today
Yeah.
than we have before. We're much more complex than before.
Yeah.
Although some of the problems are perennial, they are the same.
Yeah.
But I think there's been some, you could say, updates to our suffering in many ways.
I know what you mean. Yeah. Different ways to go about it, different ways to heal. Just
Yes.
it's like a different wavelength. We're in a different world. Even though it's not like a physical world, we are in a different consciousness at this point in time.
Yes. 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 So, so that's really important. And like I said, I really want to my whole process and thought process is that we need to ensure that we keep spirituality as simple as possible,
Mm.
that we keep it as grounded as possible, and we don't go into airy fairy land.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
moment we do, I'm not saying that miracles don't happen. I'm not saying that those things do not occur, but they become distractions
I agree.
for the
I know
real
what you
deal.
mean. Yeah.
And you
And
know,
that doesn't really help anybody. Like, does not really
no,
path to
no,
healing. It's just entertainment in a way.
yeah, it is entertainment. I remember. So you must have heard of UG Krishnamurti. He was quite
Hmm.
radical as a person, right?
Yeah.
And there's one video he has where he's been recorded by somebody, and he's in someone's home, and he's being followed, and the guy asks him, uh, you know, do you believe in against Satya Sai Baba with the healing powers? And he was like, and at first he's like, which one, the new one or the old one? So he, because there's two Sai Babas, right? So, and the guy goes, the new one, the one with the afro, and he's like, oh yeah, that one. And then he's like, he goes into a spiel of his thoughts on him, and then he goes, well, anybody can have healing powers. He goes, my grandmother was bit by a scorpion, and apparently that gives healing powers, and
Hmm.
she had healing powers. And this is a hardcore rationalist
Yeah.
who even said there's healing powers. So
Mm.
for me, like, I don't denounce those things. I don't deny those things. But like you said, they just distract us from actually working on our own being, from our own self, and,
Yeah.
and they take us away from the core. I feel,
I think so too. Yeah.
you know, because
Mm.
somebody asked me about Neem Karoli Baba actually yesterday,
Hmm.
about the miracle he does. I think Ram Dass has spoken about it, where under the blanket, I think there was 4 apples, and then 10 apples appeared, or something like this. Um, and I said, well, one, yes, Neem Karoli Baba will say, it's God that did this. He'll never point to himself.
Yeah.
That's his humility.
Mm.
But also, if he did it, it's for that person in time. Now think about it. My
Yeah.
question would be to Neem Karoli Baba would be, yo, make enough apples for the whole world then. There shouldn't be poverty.
Hmm.
But the thing is, it's only for that person. That person shouldn't be spreading it
Yeah.
here, there, and everywhere, you know?
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. I know what you mean. That transmission of truth is based upon the moment that like
Yes.
it's what's the word I'm looking for? There's a certain word I can't think of it right now, but it's like based upon the circumstance of the people or the person that the transmission is being transmitted. Like
Yes.
there is something important about having that the story, but there is something about Ram Dass being there in that moment that he got the message, and he had the awareness to be able to get the message, and that is present, I think, in our lives too, in everybody's
Yes.
life. You have to have the awareness to be able to get the message in certain circumstances, and it's an ongoing process. I think you can, if you're really tapped in and aware enough, there's the truth is the message is everywhere.
Yeah.
You can always get that message. but in certain circumstances, it really shines through, and it's based upon if you're really tapped into your own being, you can kind of see through the noise and see what it's trying to show you. That the Apple story is just representative of the Apple story in our own lives, I believe.
Yes, yes, yes. Yeah, so yeah, absolutely beautiful. These things are a metaphor to show us about our life. That
Yeah.
actually, what when we think we have less, we actually have more than enough.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Or there could be several ways you could interpret that. But yeah, for example, when Rabda speaks about it, also he's probably speaking to a select few who will understand what he's talking about.
Yeah,
Do
it's
you see what
true.
I mean? And then when, unfortunately, what happens is we have to transcribe and we document these things, and then it can enter. See, then, as we mentioned, the person is going to be reading it according to their interpretation. They're in a dictionary, not not
Exactly.
according to how Ramdas saw it or how Neem Karoli Baba performed it.
Mm-hmm.
You know.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, I think all these things have a place in spirituality, and they can occur. I think there's lots of things we cannot explain anyway. But going back to, it's really important just to allow people to directly experience the truth,
Yep.
keeping it as simple as possible. That is great. For me, those are the best teachers. You look at Ramana Maharishi, I mean, he spoke maybe a few words, but my God, has he just transformed a lot of the Western uh, sphere with Hinduism of non-duality.
Yeah.
And an incredible person, Nisargadatta Maharaj. I mean, who can get someone as rational as Sam Harris to promote his book? I mean, do we? It just shows that these people have a simple way of expressing deeper truths, and we have to understand that there's no need to complicate the spiritual journey.
Yeah.
It's there's no need to put so many apps on this, different applications. It's just, it can be so simple.
Yeah.
Um, I sometimes just get shocked at how people complicate it. I'm like, wait, how did you think this? Like,
Yeah.
a lot of times when I attend these webinars of different gurus, or I see them online and people are asking questions, sometimes I'm like, where do they come up with these questions? I mean,
Yeah.
I'm amazed that the questions are so precise and they hit to the point of what they want answered. And then the next time I'm like, but this is taking you away from the direct experience of awareness or pure consciousness.
Mm.
So, what value is the question? Obviously, for the person, it has an incredible amount of value. I'm just
Yeah.
talking about for me. And that's why whenever someone says, oh, if you have a question, ask. And I'm like, always stuck. I'm like, what do I ask?
Yeah. I know what you mean. I know what you mean. When you could probably think of some kind of question, obviously, but
Yeah,
it's like,
yeah,
well, what's the right question to ask?
yeah. Like, for example, we're talking and we ask questions, but this is a conversation. It's different. But when you're in a formal setting, it's totally different. Uh, um, but yeah, most of the time I just get really amazed by how people just create these intricate details in their questions about awareness. But I'm like, but you're going away from it.
Yeah.
You're stepping away from it
Mm.
when you ask the question.
Mm-hmm. We're just at different parts of our journey. It's just there's so many
Yes.
hands in the pot. You know,
Yeah.
when
Yeah.
there's a live chat with one teacher, you got 200, 300 people in the live chat, and you're not also local with each other. There's
Yeah.
so many different points in everybody's journey. So you're gonna get some wonky stuff here and there. I 100% know what you're talking about, but that's just if you know that that's just somebody else being in their journey, and that's okay. That's 100% fine. That's how it's supposed to
Yes.
be. Then that's cool, man. That's hey, more power to them. But I totally get what you're saying. I think it's just another message for you, even though the question might not pertain to you, it's just like another message to say, well, you're doing the right thing in your own
Mm,
path. You know, they're doing their
yes,
thing in their path. I'm gonna keep doing my thing in my path.
yes,
Yeah.
yes, absolutely, absolutely. And you're right. Everyone is on their own journey. And when you, uh, I mean, some people use that as a cop out, not in the situation in which you gave, but sometimes when people don't want to put any effort in, or they don't want the microscope to be on them or the spotlight on them,
Yeah.
they'll be like, "Well, spirituality is everyone's own journey," and I'm like, "Yeah, but you know what? Let's not." Now you're speaking BS because you're
Yeah.
now trying to avoid spirituality. We're
That's
not.
spiritual bypassing.
Yeah, spiritual bypassing. What we're talking about is, yeah, it's your individual journey, but there's some things that are the same. Like, for example,
Yeah.
your intention
Yeah.
to learn, that can be the same.
Exactly.
Your intention to improve, like practically improve. Um, see, you know, there is no practical steps to pure consciousness. There's no practical steps. There's no practical way of living.
Yeah.
There's no, uh, like a lot of people say, well, their teachings are practical. It's practical for your day to day life, for your material life. For the actual spiritual experience, there is no method, there is no steps you can take. There's no, you have to be incredibly polished in your impracticality
Hmm.
to understand this, to be in that pure consciousness as much as you can throughout the day. I
Yeah.
don't think everyone can be in it unless you're special, unless you've really worked on it. But for the majority of us, we are in and out of it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, some more than others. But obviously, the aim is to be in it 24/7, 365 days a year. That's the goal, obviously, for each and every
You
one
think
of
so?
us. Yeah.
Mm.
Well, if awareness and pure consciousness is beyond time, then it has to be eternal. It has to be
Yeah.
always there.
Yeah.
So what I'm saying is, it's not a dualistic life. Like awareness is there and day to day is there. No,
Gotcha. Yeah.
awareness is like suffused in day to day life.
Yeah.
It's totally immersed in it. It's an immersive experience. Let's put
Hmm.
it that way.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so, yes. So we it's it doesn't require anything. Yes, when I say this, I also know it's a paradoxical thing because a guided meditation can lead you there. Yeah, this conversation can lead someone there. Uh, anything can lead you there. I understand that, but what I mean is, like when we're looking for those practical steps, they they will just touch awareness, but they won't get you deeply rooted in it.
Yeah.
To be deeply rooted in it, that's where surrender comes in. That's
Yeah.
real surrender.
Mm-hmm.
That's the real surrender, is when you touch and then you immerse.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yep. Surrender to the process.
And then what happens is you just, once you surrender to that pure consciousness, it you get rid of any notion of persona. Like when I'm in awareness, I do not know where Rahul is.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah.
Actually, I know for sure Rahul does not exist in this.
Yeah.
Rahul is just a content that has appeared
Hmm.
for a certain amount of time. Really is just a blip in this whole thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, not even in a nanosecond in this whole play of existence,
Hmm.
in this content of this whole play.
Yeah.
So when you immerse yourself and you're willing to be that nothingness, that emptiness, that it's not empty, but that formless, you don't, once you come out of that, when you have to go back into the day-to-day life, you don't, You're not bringing anything with you
Yeah. Yeah.
because
There's nothing to bring.
you already are it. So
Mm-hmm.
therefore, now you function in life as that content of consciousness. You automatically
Yeah.
know what you are. Now, for example, it goes back, that's when it becomes practical. Your day-to-day life, your every breath, your every single gesture, your every single word is then from the understanding that this is just the play of the content of consciousness,
Yeah.
and that everything has a certain reaction to this content of consciousness.
Mm. Wow. Well said.
That's where karma comes in, the cause and effect process. Everything.
Mm-hmm.
So then you just know this is going to stay in the, you know, when people ask me, what do you believe in happens after death? My answer is nothing. The
Mm-hmm.
body, yes, that would go, the body matter itself, that will be depending on whether you're buried or cremated, that will go through that process. But you become something else. You transfer that, and that matter is transferred into something else. It's transmuted into something else. And the thing that made you you, well, you already are it.
Exactly. Yeah.
The thing that you're trying to find that is you has already, it
Already
was
died
always there.
in a way. Yeah. Never
Yes.
born. Never
Never
died.
die. Yes.
Yeah.
Osho's Samadhi place, before his organization got rid of it, said Osho, never born, never died, just visited this planet between the years that he was born. And I thought that was, and Osho wanted that there to show people that you just visit the planet. You don't, that's all you are. We're just guests on, as contents of consciousness, we are just guests. We're just visitors.
Mm.
We're spectators. And that's the way to see it. It's interesting, isn't it? When I don't know what it's like in the West, but for sure in the East, whenever someone dies, they say the body. They never refer it to the person.
That's true. Left his body. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh
Yeah.
yeah, the body's gonna go here. The body's gonna go into the crematorium at this time, and it's very interesting a choice of words, because the consciousness that we are, that created that aliveness in the body, has, although it has not gone anywhere, consciousness cannot leave anywhere. It just refused. That life force has disappeared. That life force has ended. And it moves on. So,
Yes.
for me, what, again, the whole spiritual journey is about understanding this, that there's the contents of consciousness and then there's consciousness.
Mm.
And if we keep spirituality as simple as that, we can you can just live it then. I obviously there's going to be questions here and there, intricate details to explain here and there, and like I said, you have the backing of tradition of the scriptures, but the experience just comes down to these two things. And once you understand and discern between the two, spirituality is no longer difficult.
Mm-hmm.
It's no longer a strong, arduous process that tires you out after, uh, you know, after years of trying.
Yeah.
There's no effort to put in,
Yep.
and this is the effortless way to be. So I feel if
Mm.
we are able to do that, and if this can be communicated more and more in an easier way, I'm hoping that those that are ready are able to understand it and then live it. Um, but yeah, I mean, but if people want to eat candy to align their chakras, they're more than welcome to.
Yeah.
That's also a content of consciousness that I cannot deny or cannot change.
I haven't tried it. I'll try it. Eat some
Yeah.
candy for chakras. Man, that's
You have to
great.
get that specific candy though. Yeah,
Yeah,
the one
right?
that TikToker is selling.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, bro, that's great. I think we can probably wrap it up at that. That was
Yes.
beautiful. Yeah. Yeah, it makes life simple and beautiful, the spiritual path.
Absolutely, it's really beautiful, man. like I said, I wouldn't like to be in any other place. I think the circumstances in which I've been born in, everything. I'm just so grateful for everything.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Same.
every moment of my life has led me to this, and is leading me into this continuously for as long as I am alive. I'm just so grateful that I've got in contact with the truth, and I've been able to at least start assimilating that truthful living.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and hopefully I can one day become the truth and become that embodiment. That's the prayer that I hope I get to achieve in this life.
Mm. Well, I think you're doing a good job. I think you're on the right path.
Oh, thank you, thank you, thank you.
Namaste, brother. This was a great
Namaste.
conversation.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, it was great. And well, I'm hoping to start doing guests for my podcast, but I'm going to put that against a paywall. I'm going to put that on Patreon. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm probably going to look at that at the second half of the year. So I'm going to have you on as a guest, and I'm going to ask you questions. So it's going to be the other way around.
Sounds good to me.
Because I
Yeah,
feel you have a
100%.
lot to share as well. I mean, the one that has so many guests and learns so much, you must have a lot to share yourself. So
It's in there somewhere. Yeah. Yeah, man. Let me know. I'll 100%. This was great. I definitely want to talk to you again. I feel like we could talk for hours, which we kind of did. But
yes,
yeah,
yes.
I'm definitely gonna digest this one, let it sit, meditate on it. I suggest anybody that listened this long to do the same.
Oh,
And yeah, other than that, wish you all the best and
thank
peace
you,
out.
thank you, thank you. Peace to you, brother. Too. Take care. Take care.
Namaste.
Namaste.